So, welcome everyone. So we continue the session on digital health, and we want to talk about a very important part in healthcare, about hospitals, and about smart hospitals. So I'm very happy to introduce my panelists to you. First of all, Veronika Schweighart, she's COO and co-founder at Climedo, a serial entrepreneur, and now tackles healthcare. An applause for her, please.
Hi.
Secondly, I invite Maria Sievert. She's founder and managing partner engineering and management in inveox, and one of the 25 women who will change the world, apparently. Welcome. And last but not least, I invite Dr. Dominik Pförringer to join us on stage. There's a lot to say about Dominik, but he's a medical doctor. He also holds an MBA. He consults on digital health, and he founded the Academy of Entrepreneurial Medicine. Please join us. So, if we want to talk about smart hospitals and the path to precision medicine, maybe a first perspective from you, Dominik, since you also work as a doctor in a real hospital, and not only in the hospital. So just for our audience who's maybe not that familiar with healthcare, except for the personal experience, how is the reality in hospitals today, from your perspective?
Well, this is a question I could answer in a lot of extent, as well as in a very short extent, and I'll try to keep it spiff and to the point.
Yeah.
We are far from where we would like to be. On the other hand, we're not as bad as everybody likes to proclaim it. So innovation has its role, but on the other hand, we're still lacking the basics. So in a couple of hospitals, the server structure is not apt for modern solutions. We don't have Wi-Fi everywhere. It's not possible to exchange data wirelessly in the hospitals in all the setup that we see. On the other hand, we see young, innovative companies that are entering the space and gladly making it better every day. So I see a lot of room for improvement, but I see the improvement also happening.
Do you have one anecdote you would like to share with us from maybe the last couple of months that particularly struck you?
Well, to be quite honest, in one of the major university hospitals in Germany, they rolled out a plan to cover this hospital with Wi-Fi, and they said by the end of 2022 it will be done. It's quite a statement, huh?
2022, that's a statement. So at inveox, you are working on pathology and laboratories. So where are we at in that field, Maria, and what are you doing about that at inveox?
Well, first of all, let me say that pathology is not the Münsteraner Tatort, which many of us in Germany would imagine. So we're not doing anything with dead bodies or so. So pathology is everything behind cancer diagnosis. So there's the diagnosis of tissue samples and biopsies being done. And in that area, we can still see a lot of manual work, a lot of paper, a lot of non-Wi-Fi age, and it's very interesting what's able to do there. And what we do is we automate the process there, and we digitize it as well. So we make sure that data enters the lab in a digital flow instead of paper, and that it's been treated securely throughout the whole lab. And yeah.
So today it's paper and non-Wi-Fi. Veronika, Climedo is also empowering research, and you work with some of the most prestigious German university hospitals, for example, Charité. So how digital is research today, or maybe not?
So if routine treatments are already improving, I can tell you that research is always 2 or 3 times worse. Because the budget is just missing over there to install IT systems over there. And we were especially struck by the huge gap that is currently happening between high-tech research possibilities. For example, new cell and gene therapies. DNA can be extracted and analyzed within less than an hour nowadays, and with costs of less than, or actually only a couple of €100. So that means there's so many things right now possible in research and in new therapies. It's like science fiction. But then if we look into the server infrastructure in hospitals and in research institutions where those new therapies should be tested and validated, it's really striking how back they are still over there. And actually, to give a little number, 52% of all clinical reports in that area are still done on paper even. So not bad systems, but paper. And we want to change that by giving a very digital and fully connected system to doctors and also to other stakeholders to collaborate on the research together.
Okay, so the current status is not that digital and not that smart. But Dominik, maybe to get back to you, because in the end we also, and that's something you mentioned, Veronika, it's about the doctors as well, and those people who are using the systems, and they are designed, in theory at least, to enable them to deliver care. So from your perspective maybe, because I think the concept of a smart hospital is pretty abstract, what would that mean from a doctor's perspective?
Well, as we pointed out in the first 3 statements, I think we need to start from the basis. That also means from the human basis. I think future doctors should be trained in the technology that we're using every day, because in every other subject matter, whatever technology you work, in whatever sector you work, you're being trained with the IT infrastructure. That's something that just doesn't happen in medicine yet. So that's something we need to get right as the groundwork. And the next thing I would like to elaborate to add on that is the interfaces. So the interface between the human and the machine is still not working really properly. In a lot of systems where we could have voice recognition, there's still a person typing a report, printing it out, putting it into a folder, I get it, I sign it, or I correct it, then it goes back to a human. This is all loops we don't need anymore, and that's not 21st century, that's basically Middle Ages. And these interfaces come out in a lot of points, you know. As we just heard, the analysis is really fast, and then the fax machine that delivers it to the doctor is out of paper. And that's just something where you see there is a huge gap and a huge set of problems where you just see that it's not working the way it should be. And I think that is something where we can implement a lot of change and where we have a lot to gain, and it could be a lot of small steps where we can win.
And so, Veronika, how does this fit into your future vision of smart healthcare research in hospitals?
Yeah, I think that's definitely important steps to take, and that's exactly the way where we want to go. It's like this fully connected infrastructure system where different stakeholders in research, but also in diagnostics, can help each other out, can coordinate each other and collaborate on the data points and on the research to bring the best possible therapy to patients. So that's actually our vision of the future healthcare market, to provide every patient with the best possible treatment. And that in our case means that we want to accelerate those very new possible therapies to give access to patients faster. And yeah, that's our vision of the healthcare market.
Cool. That sounds like a very appealing vision for me personally, especially when we hear where we are now. So how does because before you get a therapy, there's diagnosis. So how ideally want you to see this part integrated in a smart hospital?
Well, you know, today diagnosis is on the one hand very complex, and on the other hand we talk a lot about personalized medicine, personalized treatments and so on, but diagnostics, especially in the cancer section, can't really deliver this right now because we're still stuck in the basic processes where we just run every sample through the same process, not individual whatsoever. But then this also offers a huge potential right now because we can really form this process in a way that it could fit future needs. So when you think about it, it's us startups doing things like that, but it's also the doctors. So we know one pathologist, for example, he just went to MediaMarkt, he purchased a camera, he screwed it next to his microscope, and then he took the pictures, made them digital for himself, shared them with his colleagues via WhatsApp. Totally crazy process, but possible and also of interest for them. And I think there's a lot that can be done.
Nice, and it's
fit in there.
And it's really cool that there are actually pathologists and doctors who want to change things. But so the vision and the idea of connected healthcare is very appealing. We all agree that that's the way it should be. Patients would benefit from it. Doctors would benefit from it. So why do we not have it? So one reason is probably there's no Wi-Fi until 2022 in one of the major university clinics. But what else? What do you experience? I don't know who wants to start. Well, go ahead.
I see a major downside basically in the implementation is the human factor. Just doctors tend to be very resistant to change, as well as all the payers and providers in the healthcare system tend to be resistant to change. And a lot of people are now basically paralyzed through the German data protection regulation, because everybody thinks they are doing something wrong in the first place. And I mean, whenever you hear the criminal setup of WhatsApp in the medical sector, and I'm purposely choosing this word, is that we're always sort of not on the legal aspect, but on the semi-legal or paralegal. So we need to make rules and we need to offer solutions that people can actually do that, because that's something that's happening every day. In every hospital, every day, diagnoses are being shared through cell phones, in a 95% in an unsecured manner. But people are neither instructed, so they don't know of other solutions, nor are these solutions being offered at the right point. So I think that's something where I again say the groundwork to exchange data between people. Most patients come and see me and show me some pictures or some diagnosis or some letters from other doctors on their phone. And that's something that's just ridiculous in the 21st century. Because if you think about it, if nowadays you want to fly and you have a paper ticket, people look at you like a dinosaur. But in medicine, it's standard every day.
Yeah, we still fax. And we pay doctors to send faxes to their colleagues.
Yeah.
But so one reason, so one factor was the human factor, and then there's also the provision of solutions. I mean, so there are solutions, but what are the other issues then?
Well, you know, there's also a lot of emotions involved in this. So when we started inveox about 3 years ago with the project, we were by far one of the only few Munich healthcare startups, so there were not a lot of around us. There were a lot in apps, there was a lot in mobility, smart city, and so on. But healthcare, we really had to look for other startups to share in that area. And I think it's not because it's so much harder than in other industries. I think it just feels harder and the barrier is higher because people think it may be too complex or too difficult to get into it. But I think actually if you really want to do it, it's not that hard. You just got to try, and it's also fun to face that complexity as a startup. And the other thing Dominik mentioned already, the data protection and so on, to me that's the same thing. It's emotion that is hindering us with the market entry, because from the legal side of things, what we actually are allowed to do with data in healthcare, it's not that very complex. You as a startup, you need a good lawyer, someone who can give you very good advice on the legal situation, what you're allowed to do and what not. But then when you go into the market, the doctors really face fear because they also don't know what are they allowed to do or what not. And you just go in there, you say you have a digital system, it's totally proved, it's very secure, and they are like, no, it's patient data. I don't know, I'd rather take the fax.
Yeah, I mean, which is also just faxing. It's also just a way of processing data. But yeah, okay. So emotions.
We just published a very nice video on our website. Why is fax not the most secure way of communication?
Well, yeah, good point. So emotions and fear about how to deal with data privacy issues. Yeah. So Veronika, can you, from your experience, add some other hurdles on this?
Yeah, actually, regarding the fax machine and that case, I also feel that even local installed servers are also much less secure than cloud solutions. But that's also a big emotional factor that's not yet in our heads. But there is proof, there's a lot of statistics, and I think we need to also tell the people that it is, and also prove to the people and to the doctors and to the clinic heads that it is more secure. And then I think it's a lot of time involved there, but the ground research for it is over there, and I have a good feeling that we should definitely get there. And one more thing regarding the patient data and the security over there, I feel that, or I'm a big advocate of giving the full power of the patient data to the patients themselves. They should really be the ones who can tell others if they are allowed to use it or not. And the interesting fact about that is that for research data, more than 50%, it's actually 59% of patients would be willing to share the data with research purposes because they feel that they can profit from it themselves and everybody else can profit from it. So I feel that we should make use of the statistics and then let the patients decide if they want to use it or not. And then with that, I think we would have a much better foundation to make more use of the data.
Have you experienced that? I mean, you're mostly working with professionals. I guess you don't have that much contact to the patients directly, not in your business. I mean, of course, I guess you get a lot of user stories. But so, have you experienced similar, similar feedback from patients that actually they want their data to be used, or are they more skeptical? What do you perceive if you get to talk about that with patients?
It's a little bit of both. So within cancer, when you're in this diagnostic process, I just know it from people in my environment and in my family, you're in this sort of funnel as a patient yourself, because you don't know what's coming up in your diagnosis. You're scared, and you just want to go further. But then you have also the relatives and the family around it that are very interested in that whole process. And I think it would be very beneficial to keep them at least somewhat involved, the patients and their families around it, within the data. And the other thing is, for actually clinical research on new cancer treatments and so on, we really experience that they are very willing to give it, especially if you get back a diagnosis of a possibly deadly cancer or something. You really want to share and help research to find a cure for whatever you have.
Dominik, something that sometimes doctors are accused of is that they use the whole data privacy issue and say, oh, we got to protect the patients, otherwise we have the fully transparent patient, it's all going to be exposed. But in the end, some people argue it's only about the doctors who are not willing to share the data, and they're afraid of the transparency. What's your point on that? What's your view on that?
In parallel to what we just heard, I can say it's a twofold answer. I think, of course, there's black sheep, but let me compare it to a regular cab driver. Someone who's not a crook would never complain that you're following the route that he's driving on maps on your phone. If you have criminal intentions, of course, then all of a sudden you're being discovered. So I think if you're working right now, you can be transparent. You can be fully transparent. I'm very willing to send every patient, which I do right now, still analog on paper, but a detailed report on what I diagnosed, what I did with them, what the therapy was, and what the outcome was in any case, because I'm 100% transparent with that. But of course, a lot of people don't want that transparency and don't want to share that data. And to add to the fact of data sharing, what Maria just said, I think is highly important. Data protection is only of interest to you when you're 100% healthy. The moment you have a rare disease that is being diagnosed, you have the genetic code or any other specification of that disease, you would be willing to share it with everybody on this planet to just find a cure. And I mean, if you look at the United States, who are always at the forefront of innovation, more than a decade ago, a very successful platform, which is called Patients Like Me, was started. And they have been doing that. And what I see, at least from my perspective, whenever we discover a disease in someone, they would be immediately willing to share all information. And so am I. I like to be 100% transparent, but of course, there is understandable needs why other people don't want that. That could be fear of discovery of whatever they are not doing 100% right, or of that transparency. You know, there's always scenarios like that. I have for a long time been fighting for an implantable chip where we could read some emergency data out of people. What I've heard from patients that they say, well, I don't want to be remote controlled from the Americans. And I quote this, 100% quote. And I say, this chip is a passive device, and you can read it on this far of a distance. There is no remote controlling. It's not attached to your brain, nor to your muscles, nor anything. It is a storage device. And in case you come to an emergency room, which happens to us every day, and you're unconscious and cannot share information with us, this could save your life, because it could help us find the perfect therapy for you much faster. But people then have fears within them. And I think it's our job, it's the job of politicians, it's also our job within the innovative scene of young entrepreneurs, of people like you, of conferences like these, to lower these bars of fear. It's in the interest of the patient. And I'm willing to share all medical information that exists on this planet with everybody right now, for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah, and that's a great vision. Are the researchers more on the fear or the let's take a chance on data sharing side? What do you experience?
I think generally in the research scene and especially in the academia scene, I think we can also transfer it to other areas or other industries. There are sometimes the rumors that professors don't want to share their data because they think that it might harm them, or as Dominik said, there might be some issues in the way they had collected the data points or they had analyzed them. But I can say that we are really lucky with the people we talked to so far. I think we are definitely self-selecting the early adopters there, but they are really very willing to also adopt new systems because they are the, I wouldn't say the younger generation, but generally a generation which is open to transformation and to new digital systems, and they are actually used to systems which are user-friendly from their daily lives. And I feel that they now have the mission, or also they want to use in their office lives and in their jobs, the similar systems. So I feel they are quite ready and even looking actively for new solutions. And I think this is a window of opportunity where we are right now, so I'm looking into the future quite optimistically.
Yeah. Something that usually comes up when we talk about, so why are the hospitals behind, as often mentioned, especially by hospitals themselves, is, oh, we don't have the money. So yes, we know that on average American hospitals spend much more on IT, but how big of a deal is that? Maybe, I don't know, from your different perspectives. Maybe Maria, if you want to start, is it do the labs not have the money to actually digitalize?
Yeah, so pathology labs are, I think, a special area in the hospitals. So they really have quite an efficiency problem because they get paid by the number of samples they diagnose per day. So obviously, whatever they do to the sample additionally to the regular diagnosis that gets paid by the insurance, they will not get paid for. And we see a lot of pathologists out there that still do it, that very much go into molecular diagnoses and so on, even though they don't get paid for it. I mean, it's the same in other areas. I know it from the gynecology, where it's the same thing. But it's very hard for them. And what we really try to figure out with our solution is to find a way to automate and digitize them while saving them money. And this was a little bit of the clue, because this helps us to spread our solution very fast in the scene. And at the same time, we see our device as some sort of data gathering machine that we have sitting out there, which is very helpful for all sides, for the lab, for us, for the patients, for everyone who is involved in the thing. But yes, there's a big cost pressure in there.
Yeah. But they found a way, because if they can increase efficiency, it does actually work.
Yeah.
So you already mentioned that research and money.
Exactly, that's often a problem, but there's this huge gap again between the research bodies and the pharma companies who are sponsoring research, and they have the big wish to also accelerate the research and the clinical validation. So in many aspects, they are sponsoring also clinical trials for new medicine, and in that aspect, we found a way to get paid for our software indirectly as well. So this is sometimes working, but for the basic research, which we are still also fighting for, because we actually, that was our starting point. We wanted to help hospitals and academic research institutions to find and to be digitalized, and not always the big pharma companies who have a lot of money. And therefore, for basic research and for research projects which are initialized or initiated by academic research institutions, we would really like to see a better budget over there, because software is very, very much cut out of the research budget that they get. And that's a big issue for them as well. I feel that they would be willing to implement it, but often they don't have the budget.
Well, what I see quite often is an interesting parallel between what is happening in the software industry and in the medical industry. In the United States, you already see something that's called pay for performance, or outcome-based payment or reimbursement. That is something we also see in the software industry. So they come in, they offer a solution to us, they say, it's going to cost you this and that, but let's observe it for half a year. If you don't save the money that we're going to cost you, then it's for free. Then we're going to draw back, and then it's all fine. Of course, it's a high bet, But in most cases, it actually works. And I mean, I would like to draw the parallel again to the cab drivers industry. In the beginning, they thought that having an app to get customers is a threat. In the end, nowadays, it's only a threat not to have it, I would say. And the investment is relatively easy to be gained back by the cab drivers. And I see it similarly. We need to rethink a couple of reimbursement processes in the healthcare system. And through that, I see a lot of software that can be paid for, a lot of innovative solutions. And through what Maria just told us, I mean, you can probably accelerate the processing time of all your samples. Through that, process more samples per day, and through that you quickly pay for any technical solution. So I'm very much in favor, let's try it, and let's get the innovator on board and say, okay, let's share the risk between the two of us. And in most cases they do it, and if not, there's a high chance that that deal is not so good for us.
Okay, so money alone is not the key in that case. It's about the right business case. I'm going to tell that to my colleagues at the German Hospital Association, because they just keep asking for more money and more money. Before we have to close our discussion, and before the audience will be able to meet you at the Meet the Speaker Lounge, I'll ask you to maybe formulate sort of, if you had one wish that you could tell our German health ministers, like, please, if you can change something, change this. What would that be? Do you have something in mind, something concrete that you would like him to change?
Just in one sentence, I would say less bureaucracy, more entrepreneurial spirit in the government.
That's quite a good fit to what you said, but something else from oh, sorry.
Oh, it's very hard to say, but I would wish for more connectivity. I don't know how to do that really, but what we are challenged with is that the best data protection is between the doctors.
Yeah.
And that within a diagnosis, so many different doctors and so many different parties are involved, and they are all not connected with each other. And I think something very big could come out of this.
Okay. Better connection between the different providers. What's your wish?
Well, my vision would be something that the Americans call a regulatory sandbox. So a playground where we can play and lower all the standards as much as everybody would allow. So as long as I have patients who would agree to share their data in a certain setting, as well as doctors who are willing to cooperate, in that sandbox we could test a lot. And just the same as Jens Spahn is now demanding for the organ transplant law to be changed towards a very open system where everybody is a donor unless they say they don't want to be, I ask for the same. Let's lower all the standards and then say, where do we see problems? And I'm really glad that he has founded his team of not Ocean's 11, but Spahn's 11, were led by Mr. Debertin and Hendrik Mattis. I think he's going to have a great crew to find innovation in his innovation hub. So these 11 people now have 2.5 years to share their vision, and I'm happy to add to that, and I hope they hear the messages from around the country.
Yeah, very nice. I mean, they have 2.5 years to tackle some of the digitalization issues in healthcare, and the hospital you mentioned has roughly 2.5 years to install Wi-Fi. So let's see who actually gets it done. Thank you very much for the discussion. So the guys will be out there for the Meet the Speaker opportunity right after we get rid of their mics. And thank you very much for your attention, and see you around at Hub Berlin.
Thank you, Yuga.